All right, today we are cracking open a cold case that's literally thousands of years old, straight from the prophecies of the book of Daniel. We've got a crime, we've got a cover-up, and as you'll see, a very surprising suspect. The charge? Well, it's a crime against God himself.
So, here's the setup. Our mystery revolves around a figure called the despicable person, a sacred promise that gets shattered, and a crime scene right in the heart of Jerusalem's temple. The official charge is the infamous abomination of desolation. Let's start digging for clues.
Any good investigation has to start by defining the crime. Before we can even think about finding our culprit, we have to understand what this abomination of desolation actually is.
And right away, we have our first major clue. See, the source we're exploring today says this wasn't some attack from the outside. No. The original Hebrew word shakutz suggests it was an inside job, a profound betrayal that pollutes a holy place by the very people sworn to protect it. You know the saying, the call is coming from inside the house.
Okay, so now that we understand the nature of the crime, let's take a look at the usual suspect. For centuries, history has pointed the finger at one man, a ruthless Syrian king named Antiochus.
Let's meet our guy, Antiochus IV. Now, this guy wasn't the legitimate heir. He kind of slithered onto the throne through political scheming and what the prophecy calls smooth speech. So he was a usurper from day one. And believe me, that really defined his entire reign.
Antiochus's career was, well, a total roller coaster. First, he seizes power. Then, he successfully invades and plunders his biggest rival, Egypt. He's feeling pretty good about himself, so he goes back for round two. But this time, he runs smack into a Roman diplomat. And this single moment, this one confrontation, is about to change everything.
This scene is just legendary. Imagine it. A Roman envoy literally draws a line in the sand around the king in front of his whole army and basically says, "You're not leaving this circle until you agree to retreat from Egypt." Publicly shamed, humiliated, and just boiling with rage, Antiochus turns his army around and points it straight at Jerusalem.
So, our suspect, filled with rage, is now marching on Jerusalem. Let's head to the crime scene, the Holy Temple. What does the traditional story tell us happened next?
Now, for hundreds of years, this has been the accepted version of events. It's the story you'll find in most history books. A foreign, pagan king marches in and desecrates the Jewish temple. Seems like a pretty clear-cut case of outside oppression, right? Well, the source material for this explainer has a pretty shocking plot twist for us.
And this, right here, is where our detective story takes a very sharp turn. Because the evidence, when you look at it through the lens of this particular source, points to a completely different culprit.
So what if Antiochus isn't our villain after all? The conventional story blames the Gentile king, but this interpretation, it points the finger somewhere else entirely, at the corrupt Jewish high priesthood. It argues that the real crime, the true pollution, came from inside the temple walls.
Okay, here it is, the absolute heart of the argument. According to the biblical laws this source is citing, an outsider, a Gentile, literally cannot ceremonially pollute the sanctuary. Their actions just don't register that way. Only a consecrated priest, an insider, has the authority to commit a betrayal so deep that it would cause God to abandon his own temple.
And the source lays out a damning timeline of corruption. And listen to this, it all happens before Antiochus even shows up. Exhibit A, a priest named Jason bribes the king to become high priest. Exhibit B, an outsider, a guy named Menelaus, literally buys the office from him, completely shattering the sacred lineage. And the final act? Menelaus loots the temple treasury and as the true high priest assassinated. That, this source argues, that was the real abomination. This completely turns the story on its head. In this version of events, Antiochus wasn't the criminal at all. He was the weapon. He was the divine judgment, the consequence sent to punish a crime that the priests themselves had already committed. But wait, the story doesn't end there, not even close. According to this interpretation, Antiochus's attack was really just one chapter in a much, much longer story of corruption. Let's take a look at the aftermath. Now, we all know the story of Hanukkah, right? The Maccabees lead this heroic revolt, they kick out the Syrians, they rededicate the temple. It's a huge victory. But our source here describes it as only a little help. Why? Because while they won the war, they completely failed to fix the core problem, the corrupted priesthood. So the new priestly dynasty that takes over, the Hasmoneans, they weren't even from the right family line. They kept up the same dirty practice of getting the high priesthood as a political favor from foreign kings.
They persecuted the faithful, illegally called themselves kings, and ruled as absolute tyrants. The corruption hadn't gone away. It had just put on a new mask.
So the source's argument ultimately is that the desolation wasn't just a one-time event. It was a chronic sickness inside the priesthood. And this state of internal decay and illegitimate leadership, it claims, festered for another 150 years, stretching all the way to the time of the New Testament.
When you look at it this way, a story we thought was about foreign oppression suddenly becomes this chilling cautionary tale about internal corruption. And it leaves us with a really critical question. If the villain we all accepted in this story isn't the real one, how many other stories that we think we know need to be investigated all over again?